Geez, I cannot believe it's already Wednesday. Wow, that means it's time for another questions and answers video. Hello everybody and welcome. It's been really weird for me this week because I'm up all night to produce videos instead of during the day, which I have done in the past, but I sort of have to at the moment because we've got workers all over the house during the day, and that's like totally thrown me off. But we'll roll with it. I've got a couple of questions today. Just before we get into them, I wanted to add some information to some things I've said in videos over the week, because this just feels like a good place to address them. First of all, we did that video about data mine stuff that appeared back in really old versions of the client. There were two things that lots of people were talking about on that video. One of them was this thing that I called like a goblin that I just couldn't recognize at all. A lot of people thought that that was either a dredge, which I just don't see. I'm sorry, I don't see that as a dredge. Or they thought it was one of the grasping ghouls from Guild Wars 1, like that you'd find in the underworld and stuff, and admittedly all over the place. Which does match up a bit. I mean, the little goblin guy's got long arms, right? So it looks like he'd sort of scramble around in the same way that the grasping ghouls do. But I don't think there are any in Guild Wars 2, are there? There aren't that many places where sort of the underworld specifically interacts with Tyria, and we get the Atkea back, and like we have the Shades too, which all seem to be coming from Grenth's domain, but very little else. Like there aren't any grasping ghouls as far as I remember. So anyway, that's an interesting point, that maybe this wasn't like a goblin, maybe it was meant to be one of them and it didn't make it in the game nonetheless. Also on the idea of Grenth's domain, I'm reading Sea of Sorrows at the moment, and they specifically refer to Grenth's domains as the Realms of Torment, which is really weird because the Realm of Torment was something specifically different that was presumably under the control of Cormyr now. So maybe that was just like human legends mixing stuff up, but it was an interesting thing nonetheless. Also, in another video, we were talking about how Traherne basically was gifted this great sword from the Pale Tree that he could presumably have used to attack Zhaitan. He did sort of use the sword in the Cleansing of Orr, but also accidentally called it Magdair. So for anyone that got confused, Magdair is the sword from Ascalon, one of the twin swords, Sahothin and Magdair, that we did a video on, and Khalid Bolg was the sword made of the Pale Tree's bark, given to Traherne. Previously he had been given to Rhiannoc, but Rhiannoc was killed. I think Rhiannoc was the first Sylvari to die, and it was given to Traherne instead during the events of the personal story. So anyway, yeah, I just wanted to clarify those things. The footage in the background is, first of all, just a random PvP match where I'm playing, it's not a good build at all, really. But it's fun to play. The devs updated conjure weapons. I thought I was going to be spending a lot of time with a fiery axe now that it applies might every time you attack with the auto attack, and that's got some potential synergy with the 30 Grand Master Fire trait, so you can stack up might, and you can get to 25 might really easily with that axe, but it's so difficult to use. As I said, I want to do a conjure weapon video. It's coming very soon now, where I'll talk about that more. But the video, the match in particular that you'll be seeing in the background is me using an ice bow, which actually is pretty cool. They dropped the charge up time on the skill 5, so you can get these epic long stuns on people, and they actually upped the impact radius of each individual projectile from the Ice Storm too, which just puts it miles ahead of the... So you can get the Ice Storm on the Ice Bow, okay, and you can also get an Ice Storm from Glyph of Storms by casting that in Water Attunement. But the one on the bow is light years ahead of the one on the glyph. The one on the glyph does less damage, each projectile doesn't have such a high impact, I think it might even hit less times. It applies chill, while the one on the conjure weapon applies bleed, so the one with the bleeds is even more damage just because of that. And the base damage is just so much lower on the glyph version of the skill compared to the bow that it's unbelievable. Anyway, there's an interesting match there where you get to see a little bit of the power of it, particularly on the mobs. And then after that, I decided to show off some Halloween stuff, so it's me literally running around in the labyrinth where big zergs are, which kind of makes me happy to see. It's nice to see that this sort of farming aspect element has come through for the Halloween patch. It remains to be seen whether that'll be there all month, because don't forget, after 2 weeks ArenaNet usually do another update, so that will impact Halloween in some way, and I'm not sure whether that's going to just cause everyone to leave the labyrinth, kind of like what we saw with the Crown Pavilion, right? There were 2 updates based around the same kind of content, and yeah, as soon as the invasions came in the game, everybody left the previous farm area. So we'll see, but yeah, it's quite a big contrast as well to see the PvE Epic Halloween content where I'm literally just auto-attacking bosses and massive zergs compared to the PvP stuff. But hey, there we go. Right, into the questions. This is in no particular order. I just grabbed some from the most recent video. The next question is from Chuck Norris. Hello, Chuck. Oh, wait, Nuck Chorus. Amazing. Hello, Nuck Chorus. He says, do you think ArenaNet will ever remove armor restrictions? There's a lot of great looking armor in the game, but since you're limited to one type per profession, it really limits the customization. The game is about cosmetics, yet there are so many restrictions. I want a hood for my warrior. Also, do you think we'll be able to hide our chest armor? I'm not sure I really agree that there are that many restrictions. Let's be honest, okay? There's 3 armor classes, and then there are the weapons your profession can use. Those are the only restrictions, and there's a damn good reason for the weapons in particular, but I think there's a good reason for the armor restrictions too. They have never talked about wanting to remove that stuff, and I don't think they should. The armor class that you are has a big bearing on how your class feels to play. Like, while I was leveling my warrior to level 80, the game just felt so face rolly, even when I was on really offensive stuff as I was going through, just because you're heavy armor and your max vitality on a warrior too. So like, it really does have a big impact, and I don't think that they would want to remove that. Cosmetic wise, maybe we, you know, if it was something people were really crying for, my suggestion would be something like a Black Lion, like a special transmutation thing, like that costs a lot more gems and is really, you know, quite expensive and a lot to invest in. But by doing this, you can, you know, swap your light armor over into heavy stuff. It might be a technical issue too, but considering how we could preview all the different armors regardless of your class, I can't see that. I mean, it's obvious, it's probably a technical issue when it comes to the cultural armors. Like, it would look very weird to preview Sylvari stuff on a Norn, for example. That could be very odd, or hell, even Asura stuff on a Norn. So there might be a technical issue there, but for the armor classes, maybe that would be the way eventually they could do it. But there has been no word of them trying it, and I personally haven't really heard anyone asking for that either. To your second question as well, do you think we'll ever be able to hide our chest armor? That's an interesting idea too. Like, well, should they allow us to just hide everything if we want? And maybe they should, or maybe, again, that would be an opportunity to put something in the Black Lion store that is basically just like a blank chest piece that you can then transmute across. So like, it's not hiding the armor, but it's a specific type of armor that is very, very, very revealing, as in there's nothing there at all. And you know, you can only imagine how well that would sell for all the people with their female humans that are already in very slutty armor but want even more slutty. So we could see that, but that's the way I'd handle it. For me, it's not something I'm really asking for. Mike Blumen had a pretty interesting question. Considering Guild Wars 1 had a lifespan of 7 to 8 years, how many years do you think Guild Wars 2 is likely to last? Well, first of all, you kind of have to decide when is the game, like, declared dead. Like, do we declare Guild Wars 1 dead? I mean, a lot of people aren't that interested in it anymore, but there are still players there. I go into Guild Wars 1 only to gather footage for videos, but when I go in there, I see people, they're still around in Spamadan trying to sell stuff. It's really interesting to me, the perspective of these people still really regularly playing Guild Wars 1. Are they only there for Hall of Monuments stuff, or do they just enjoy that game on its own terms? Guild Wars 1 was a very different game to Guild Wars 2, so there's every bit of opportunity that players would just dislike Guild Wars 2, enjoy Guild Wars 1's way of doing things, and just haven't seen all the content yet. So, is that game dead? That's the question. There is a lot of content there. It's not actively getting new content, but you know, ArenaNet still tweet out, if you follow their Guild Wars 1 account, ArenaNet still tweet out when bonus weekends go on. Don't forget, guys, it's Halloween at the moment. You can still go in Guild Wars 1 and, like, experience Halloween and get another token for one of the hats that maybe you missed years and years ago. So is it dead? Let's say, for the purposes of your question, though, that it is. Guild Wars 1 had a lifespan of 7 to 8 years. Let's just say that that's true. How many is Guild Wars 2 likely to last? Well, I read a stat the other day that more people are currently playing World versus World. I don't know whether that's concurrently or just sort of participate in it on average over a week. More people are participating in World versus World alone for Guild Wars 2 than the entirety of the Guild Wars 1 population just before Guild Wars 2 came out. It was some bizarre stat like that that really put it into perspective how small the player base of Guild Wars 1 had gotten, and yet you didn't really appreciate with the first game how small it had gotten, or at least to me I hadn't, because most of that game felt empty anyway, right? Let's take that fact as true, or let's take it as even halfway true. I think that sets Guild Wars 2 up to last way longer, even excluding all this living story and constant content that's going out into the game. I think a lot of people would be inclined to say as well that Guild Wars 2 would die if they, like, made all these really radical design decisions that just totally went back on what they said in the manifesto, and that they just changed the game completely. And a lot of people, I think, would be like, yeah, that'll probably kill the game. But I don't even know about that, honestly. Like, look at World of Warcraft, okay? Loads of people say World of Warcraft is a completely different game today than what it was when it launched, right? And there are loads of bitter players who really enjoyed what that game originally was and don't like the decisions that Blizzard made and now have left, right? Did that kill World of Warcraft? No, because those decisions that Blizzard made to change the game, yeah, they alienated some of the original player base, but they actually brought a load of new people in, and I think Guild Wars 2 in a way probably would experience the same kind of thing. So I'm even kind of pessimistic that they could kill off their audience. Like, if they said, okay, the level cap is now 90, and it takes a month to get to 81, a month to get to 82, blah, blah, blah. Even if they did stuff like that, I don't know whether it would kill the game. It would just shift the audience around an awful lot. You have to consider as well, though, with with Guild Wars 1 that they were having like very substantial campaigns and expansions and stuff. Now, if you compare Guild Wars 1 in its release year, like after its first release year, and see how much it changed. The game actually hadn't changed that much, especially if you take it just before Factions released. But if you look at the amount of content that went into Guild Wars 1 during that second year, when we had 2 campaigns basically came out within the scope of around about 1 single year, and it's curious to me to see whether Guild Wars 2 will compare. Don't forget the audience of Guild Wars 2 is growing as well, so yeah, I mean, I think we're on course, to sum up this answer, I think we are on course for the 7 to 8 years, and perhaps even more. The one big thing that could kill this game would be an announcement of Guild Wars 3. That could kill this game. Will the release of other MMOs kill this game? I'm not even sure about that. I mean, WildStar is set to be a very different experience in the first place. ESO has a lot of hype around it just because of the IP, I feel. And yeah, also there's a lot of skepticism and cynicism to do with that game. And I think, you know, all that game needs, ESO is like a very volatile thing as far as I'm concerned right now. And all it needs is a really bad launch and maybe not too many patches after the first 5 or 6 months or so. And that could be looking like a sinking ship. And again, ESO as well is a very different game to Guild Wars 2. The only MMO that is due to release and is sort of competing on Guild Wars 2's own terms is EverQuest Next. That's a while to come out, so there's plenty of time for ArenaNet to sort of establish themselves again as something different to what those guys are doing. But, you know, EQ Next is like the closest thing to me that could really impact Guild Wars 2, and that's a long way off anyway, right? A really long way off. So I think we've got time to see whether ArenaNet can keep growing and keep growing, cut out a piece of the MMO audience really solidly for itself, and then just weather any storm that comes in. And the only other thing maybe would be some bizarre stuff happening with NCSoft, right? That just caused the ArenaNet to get shut down or laid off or something, and then it's just ruined. So, and that's very unlikely to happen too. So yeah, there you go. A little bit, I guess, of a video I was trying to do last week, where I was trying to put out something about Guild Wars 2 versus other MMOs, and maybe you get a little bit of my insight from that. Matthew Sessions says, hey WP, the ongoing question of player housing in guild halls has been a hot topic before release. I would like to see Orr continue to turn green and be recolonized. One way it would like is to be able to make of the new Orr my home. What would you like to see happen with Orr, and if you could pick a place interior, where would you stake your home? This idea of revamping Orr, I don't think it can ever happen. I don't think that just slapping green grass in Orr will make much sense, and I don't think people are going to care that much for it. Orr, before its destruction, was this really beautiful, fantastical, Arabic, golden, architectural marvel of a nation, right? This beautiful place full of life and magic. And the idea of cleansing Orr, getting rid of all of Zaitan's corruption, I guess the end goal there, right, is to bring Orr back to what it originally was, and that's what I'd like to see from that process. And simply reskinning the floor to be green and reskinning all of the ruins everywhere to be gold, even if that would somehow make sense that they'd been restored, it's just not going to work. If you look at a lot of the point of interests and waypoints and areas in Orr, they currently work as they're destroyed. Like, you've got the village of Ren, okay? And it's like, oh, this used to be the village of Ren. This is where that area from List of Scriptures was. This place would have been really cool. And you can read that and sort of appreciate that on a weird level just because it's a point of interest. But actually, in-game, you go there, and it's a tiny little area where the Pact have set up a tiny little camp, right? And if we were going to restore Orr, and say Zaitan's gone, the Pact don't need to be set up here anymore, and the way we make the village of Ren come back is by, like, changing the colour of the floor there and then trying to add a few huts, you're going to realise very quickly it doesn't work. There's not enough space there for a whole village to feasibly exist. So, I just don't think that they can easily, I mean, they could totally redo the entirety of all 3 Orr maps. They could do that, and then that would be the cleansed Orr. But short of doing that, there's no way that they can cleanse it in a really nice way, I think, or a way that does justice to what people are hoping for. And then, if we're going so far as to say, oh, they have to destroy all 3 maps, then we're not just talking about losing playable areas, we're talking about losing all the dynamic events that go along with them. Think about every event that's in Orr has got something to do with the Risen. That's all going to have to go if we cleanse Orr. There's going to have to be a whole bunch of new stuff, solid reasons for why that new stuff is there. Are they going to have to put heart quests there to try and pad stuff out? There's just like this whole ton of content that they just have to nuke out of the game that I just don't think they're going to do. They've talked about how their original vision for Orr was something a lot closer to, I guess, what World vs. World was going to be like, and they are slowly going to be, like, working on implementing that and, you know, revamping the God Temples and stuff. That's not going to be an option if at the same time they decide we're going to have to revamp Orr. Lastly, as well, you look at the personal story. This is something that the devs themselves have said on occasion. If they destroy or you know, cleanse this version of Orr, that doesn't make any sense for new players of the game going going through their personal story. Oh, we're walking through a really happy, bright and lovely Orr, and now we walk to this one area and all of a sudden everything's corrupt as we load into our story instance. It just doesn't make sense. And then the solution there that people throw forward is, oh, well, we'll just have 2 separate versions of Orr. We'll have a corrupted Orr for people who haven't finished the personal story, and a good, clean Orr for people that have. But then that's got its own problems. You're splitting the player base even more. Not only are you splitting the player base, but you're forcing players to complete their personal story, potentially, in order to play with their friends. And a lot of people don't like the personal story, and that's a hefty investment of time. And that's sort of against what a lot of Guild Wars 2 is trying to do. So it just won't work, okay? There are even more reasons than that. I'll stop it there. I don't think we will see Orr be cleansed. I think the best way they can do it is add new zones around Orr, deeper in Orr, along the Scavenger's Causeway, where we get to see Traherne's work on Orr come to fruition in some way. That's the best way I think that they'll do it, and I think that's the way we eventually will see it done. And hey, if you want a guild hall, if you're one of these players that really wants guild halls, and you want it to be in that area of Orr, then cool. Like, maybe that can be another feature that they put on the side. But me personally, I don't care about guild halls, I don't care about player housing. But if I had to stake my home somewhere, maybe it would be in Garenhof. I don't know. I feel like that's such a well-realised area, even though there's, like, nothing to do there at all. I think Garenhof would be quite cool. Or I could give you a cheeky answer and be like, oh, I would put it in the Verdant Cascades or in the Deljamore Front, just so that I get to see those areas. I don't know. I haven't really thought about it that much. It's never appealed to me, player housing and guild halls and stuff. So, yeah. All right, one final question. I'll try and make it quick. This is from Zhao, who says, I'm now farming for a legendary, the Flameseeker Prophecies. Then I remember the lore video you made about the Flameseeker Prophecies. Is there a link between them? Yes, there is. The Flameseeker Prophecies were supposedly written by Glint, the old champion of Kralkatorrik, in which she predicted the downfall of the Messart. It was sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy in that, had she not written this book, if she had not written these prophecies, then the Messart never would have thought they were in danger, and then they never would have started killing people to protect themselves, and then we never would have destroyed them because they were killing people. Like, it all happened because Glint wrote those prophecies, and there are theories there that maybe she wrote that prophecy because she was in league with the Forgotten. The Forgotten had cleansed her of her corruption and brought her to her senses and freed her from the yoke of the Elder Dragons, and then maybe she found out, oh, and the Forgotten have been betrayed by the Messart, and in return she thought, okay, well, I'll write this prophecy that is going to be self-fulfilling, and this will eventually spell out the downfall of the Messart for you. You know, like, that could have been the story that was there. That's my own personal little theory anyway. But yeah, like, they are a real thing in lore, and many of the legendary weapons do have some seat in lore. Rodgort is the name of a particular elementalist character that's existed in this universe, had a lot of skills named after him in the first game in particular. His name is also Trodgor, spelt backwards, which is a reference to something else. Is it D&D? Is it D&D that's a reference to? There's a reference to something, but yeah, there's a lot of legendaries that have some seat in lore. It's pretty cool. There are quite a few. There are also some that just sort of don't make sense, or, you know, like the Incinerator. This is basically a lighter, and that's not really been heard of anywhere in the story before, but yeah, a lot of them are, and the Flameseeker Prophecies is probably the most profound of those, in my opinion. Anyway, there you go, guys. That's the Q&A for today. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you're having a wonderful night, and I will see you next time. Have a good one, everyone.